Welcome to another edition of Exercise the Right Choice. On this show, we explore different things to do with your spare time. Well, this is a very special show about hobbies. Fan is short for fanatic, and we're going to meet the biggest Dylan fan. This is Mel Prusak. Hi, Mel.
Hi, how you doing?
Mel, you have taken a hobby to its highest level. Why Dylan?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I have reached the highest level. Why Dylan? Well, I always was a collector. I was basically rock and roll. I loved rock and roll from its inception. I was one of the few people in the early days that really felt this was music that could change the world, when most people felt it was not going to last. I'm the same age as Dylan, and I could relate very well to him growing up listening to the same music. He became very famous as a folk singer in the beginning. I feel I got into him very late, because I didn't really get to know him until 1965. And he had started here in like 62 as a folk singer. And I was into folk music, but the only way I knew him was through like the music of other people. I was interpreting his work, like Peter, Paul and Mary had Blowing in the Wind. So I heard of Bob Dylan, but I never actually heard him himself. One day in 65, I was just twirling the TV stations, and he was in the middle of a song, It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding, an incredible song, and I was mesmerized by it. And I didn't know who he was, but I was mesmerized. The next day I just ran out and got the album. And then it wasn't long before I picked up all the past older albums too. Because here was a singer that was saying something that nobody else was doing, and that no one else has ever done.
That album has turned itself all these years into a shrine, and you actually have a shrine that people come to visit, and it's a shrine to Dylan. What's in this shrine?
Well, my shrine is a little bit different than most other ones. Now, there are Dylan shrines, and there's also Frank Sinatra shrines and Elvis shrines all over the country. And basically, most Dylan museums, I could say, have the records, they have the music, they have the books, things that anybody could just collect, which I collected too, but that's my shrine is unique in that I have created things that are one-of-a-kind things.
Now, you call it Zim art. Why Zim art?
Well, before there was a Bob Dylan, there was a Robert Zimmerman. So Zim art is the name I chose for these creations that represent Dylan's work, but in form. Now, there's a concept behind Zim art. It's not just a piece of art that it describes a Dylan song or a line from a song, even though it does that, but it's more than that. See, Dylan was unique in a respect that when he created his music, he went to old, discarded music. There was an old gospel song called No More Auction Block. He took that song, and from it he created Blowing in the Wind. He took the riff from La Bamba, and he created Like a Rolling Stone. So my concept was that you take old, discarded things that have been thrown away and create something new that has a message and says something. So as what Dylan did with his music, that's what my Zim art does. I tell people, you want to create Zim art, go to your attic, go to a flea market, listen to some Dylan songs, hear something that captures your imagination, and create it.
Okay, Mel, the most famous piece of Zim art is the hat that got you in that film at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and here it is. Want to explain it to me?
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't the hat.
Okay.
It was the Zim art, Mr. Tambourine.
Oh, the tambourine. Okay.
See, now, Mr. Tambourine Man, when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame people saw that particular thing, they loved it. And that's what got me into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that particular piece of art. So when I went to the grand opening to see my film, I had to go to the grand opening, I wanted to be seen. I made up this hat to go to Cleveland and walk around with it.
Okay.
And
you wore an exhibit.
Yeah, I wore an exhibit. Because that way people were looking at the exhibit and they turned around and said, oh my God, this is the person that did it.
Cleveland will never be the same, Mel.
No.
I don't think so.
And in the movie, the line I say about this particular piece is that, yes, this is Mr. Tambourine Man with one arm waving free. See, the one arm was waving free, and that's a line in the song. And a lot of people didn't catch that, and then when I said it, oh my God, yeah, one arm is waving free.
Well, you're just full of Zim quotes, too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite pieces in the shrine is your equation. Want to tell me about that?
Well, I created this Dylan equation, They're basically dolls of characters. One is Elvis.
Was he some sort of inspiration to Dylan?
Yeah, when Elvis came around and Dylan saw Elvis, Dylan said, "This is what I got to do for a living. This is it." And that's when he decided that he's going to go into music. He loved rock and roll, and he wanted to follow. When he graduated from high school in 1959, in his yearbook it said, "My ambition is to follow Little Richard." A lot of people don't know that because he became so famous. He was the king of folk music. Him, Joan Baez, the Queen and King. The reason he went into folk music was because in the beginning, rock and roll being his first love, he couldn't afford to hire people. He couldn't have a band. He couldn't afford to hire people.
So he was a solo act.
Then when he saw Woody Guthrie, he said, "Wow, with Woody Guthrie, all I need is a harmonica and a guitar."
So the equation starts with Elvis.
Starts with Elvis plus James Dean.
Now why
When
James
he went to
Dean?
see Rebel Without a Cause, it changed his life. He became like James Dean, and he got his attitude. His attitude was the attitude of James Dean, which was the rebellion against what was going on in those days, and which has never changed. He has never sold out. He has never done anything to change his stance from the beginning. Always fighting for the freedom of people, and not to follow idols, not to. He's against a person like me. He doesn't understand why I even do this. He says, "You're not." He's against it. Even though he felt that way about Woody Guthrie, he doesn't understand other people picking an idol and saying, "Yes, I want to follow this person too."
So Elvis plus James Dean equals Dylan.
Dylan. So my equation is pictures of them equaling Dylan.
You are incredibly clever. And in seeing some of the art, tell me about a couple of others. There's the brass bed for Lay Lady Lay.
Yeah, well, it's very simple. There you see the brass bed with Dylan's guitar on it, and it represents Lay Lady Lay.
Right, right. Now, where does the inspiration come? You work here in the shrine.
I may just be here just listening to some music, and I would hear a line from a Dylan song, and I would say that, and I see a picture of it. And then I remember something laying around. Oh, I have that. Like I had a planter downstairs with a broken pump on it. And I brought it up and said, "Oh, the pump don't work because the vandals took the handle." So I have the pump without the handle. And Lay Lady Lay, and of course Mr. Tambourine. And it just comes to me by listening to Dylan's music.
Now, how about the clocks? The clocks are all about time, right?
Well,
share one of the clocks with me.
When I first started this whole the whole Zimart, I created what I called Dill Time. Time has been a very, very important factor in Dylan's work throughout his career. Time has always had a very important factor. So I started creating clocks that represented time and Dylan. And I have over 100 of them now. I call it the Dill Time display. And it's all these clocks that represent Dylan songs relating to time. And that's how I first got started creating my own things. That's what made it different, that I created these one. I was going to give them out. I said, someone comes to the shrine, I'll give them a souvenir. But then I couldn't part with it because I loved it. I said, "Oh, this is a one piece. It's my art. I can't give it away." So it kept going up and up and up. And then I started with keychains. I made a whole set of keychains that represent. One of the keychains says, "I saw Elvis at the Dylan Shrine." Well, you saw Elvis in the equation.
Yes, I did.
And this is a souvenir basically of the Dylan Shrine with Elvis on it and Dylan on it, and it's a souvenir of the Dylan Shrine.
Tell me, if you met Dylan, what would you say?
Yeah, well, if I met him, or you mean when I meet him?
When you meet Dylan.
When I meet him, I'll probably be the way he was when he met one of his idols. He once bumped into Johnny Ray in an elevator, and he was tongue-tied. He didn't know what to say. I'd probably be the same way. I probably wouldn't know what to say to him.
Well, Mel, I'm convinced you're going to meet Dylan.
It would be nice.
Thanks for sharing your shrine.
It's been my pleasure.